because as those of you who have been through this process with me a few times know, we are literally always looking at these numbers and crunching these numbers right up until the 11th hour. So let me dive right in. It is now 5:05 p.m. This is a special joint meeting of the Board of Finance and City Council for the purposes of discussing the city budget. I'll jump right in. I know I want to stand and pledge the flag. Sorry, we pledge the flag behind me. Let's jump right in to item number 1 on our agenda. This is a presentation of written comments from the public. Carol and or John, are you ready to proceed with that?
Yes, Mayor, we're ready to roll.
Oh.
I'll start off. There's 19 messages tonight. The first one, and they're in order of receipt. So the very first one we received on May 9th was from John Spiegelhalter. I'm not sure if he's a Torrington resident. He writes, Mayor Carbone, a couple days ago, May 7th, I read an article in the Republican American entitled, Torrington Boards Spar Over Funding Squeeze. As an overburdened retired taxpayer in Torrington on a fixed income, I'm embarrassed that we have these Board of Education members representing Torrington exhibiting such childlike behavior every year. A few names and faces have changed over the years, but the Board of Ed still has the same modus operandi every year. No matter what directive you give them, level funding directive, 2.5% maximum increase, etc., concerning their next budget, they always submit higher budgets than your directive, and they can't possibly operate at your proposed guideline level. According to what I've read in the newspapers, I'm getting different messages concerning your goal for next year's mill rate. Is your goal a 0 mill rate increase or a 0.75 mill rate increase? In either event, the new grand list was published to be approximately 2.4% higher than last year. Normally, this would result in a mill rate reduction if you could keep a spending cap of level funding for all of these departments. I obviously don't have to remind you that Torrington currently has the 8th highest mill rate out of 169 municipalities in Connecticut. Advancing up this list is not the direction Torrington requires to attract new businesses and additional taxpayers, not to mention retaining our current taxpayers. Has the Board of Ed been living in a cave during the past couple of months plus? With the COVID-19 pandemic, nearly 20% of the taxpayers are now unemployed. They are lining up at food banks to get food donations to feed their families. All non-essential businesses are closed. Some will never again reopen, and the prospects of getting back to a normal lifestyle as we know it are nowhere in sight. Meanwhile, the Board of Ed and the remaining school district staff are still getting their paychecks, compliments of the taxpayers. Anyway, why does the Board of Ed feel that they are entitled to an increased budget? Have they done a great job educating our students? No. The current Torrington School District ranking in Connecticut is 137th out of 153 districts. Last year, Torrington was ranked 121st of 151 districts. Their performance has gotten worse. If they drop another 16 positions, next year they will be the worst school district in the entire state. How did the 11th grade Torrington High School students perform on their last SAT tests? Failed. Less than 50% met the English Language Arts proficiency standard, and less than 25% met the math proficiency standard. That indicates a complete failure of Torrington's entire educational system, K through 12, to prepare their students for college and a successful career. Student enrollment has steadily declined by 20% over the past 10 years and continues to drop. Has the school district's administration and support staff headcount declined accordingly? No. There is a lot of fat, also called non-essential employees, in the school district's organizational charts, if you can find one published. Why do we need an assistant superintendent of schools, several assistant principals, etc.? An assistant mayor isn't required, and your position is the most demanding in town. All of these non-essential positions do not help to educate the students. Graduation rates continue to drop annually, but that figure today only indicates that a student attended class occasionally for 12 years. It no longer indicates that the student met the state's minimum proficiency standards to qualify for a graduation certificate. Well, that's enough venting for now. I'm just wasting my time and yours, and your time is much more valuable than mine. You have an entire town of frustrated taxpayers depending upon you to try to keep all of these municipal departments fiscally responsible. Let's see some positive results and progress by each of these departments to justify any budgetary increases. An occasional budget decrease would be great to see in these trying times. Happy Mother's Day, John.
Okay, the next one is from Victor Grossetti of High Street. The city of Torrington needs to slash all its budgets so it can lower the ridiculously high tax rate. In the past 12 years, property taxes have doubled in this town. For what? Slash the education budget, since as long as coronavirus goes unchecked without adequate testing or vaccines or a cure, and without scientifically sound federal leadership from Trump in the White House and Mitch McConnell in the Senate, there will be no need to use the school buildings, and at-home education will continue. Their policies ensure that a disastrous second wave will hit the country by the fall, so schools probably will not reopen until 2022 at the earliest. Additionally, there are too many administrators on salary. Get rid of those positions completely. That's what computers are for. Slash the staff salaries of everyone who works for the city of Torrington. These are tough times and tough measures must be taken. There are too many people working in every department, and many of those positions need to be eliminated completely. Working for the city should not be a gravy train of cronyism, even though that is the example set by the current administration in Washington. The property owners of Torrington have been taxed enough already. It is your moral and civic duty to lower our taxes. That's it.
Okay, now we have an email from Dennis Andrews of Torrington. Good day. My question is this. I wonder how the department heads expect us to pay more in taxes when our Social Security and pension aren't going up. Plus, the average person doesn't get raises like state and city workers. Where is it written those city workers are entitled to a raise every year? I know they have unions. This doesn't give them the right for the high percentage of raises. It also would be nice if the sewer user fee could be a tax so we could use it towards our federal tax. I would expect the city fathers to find ways to cut the fat. We as taxpayers have to find ways to cut the fat and mill rate. Not sure how other states and even some surrounding towns can keep taxes in check. In one case, a tax decrease.
All right, next one is from Diane Dvorak of Torrington. To whom it may concern, in years past, whenever there has been a revaluation of city properties and there has been an increase in the property value, the mill rate has decreased to even out for the increased property values. The mayor is stating that she wants to leave the mill rate where it is, but the city budget items have to be reviewed and cut somewhere for this to happen, else there will be an increase to the tax rate. Now, with the way the economy is right now, which is extremely horrible, don't you think it would be in the best interest to leave the mill rate alone, or better yet, lower it a little? This town economically is in trouble, but so are a lot of people who live in this town. And to increase your property values and not lower the mill rate is a kick in the teeth. I know the city can tighten up their budgets somewhere so that this can be figured out. Stop the excessive overtime. Stop the useless spending of monies just because there is an overage at the end of the budget or fiscal year. Put that leftover money towards next year instead of having us taxpayers reach deeper into our pockets to pay for the so-called increased budget line items. Because right now, a lot of our pockets are empty, along with the savings accounts we used to have.
Hey, from Tim O'Donnell from Torrington. Good day to the board members of concern. This letter is written in support of the fire department budget for 2021. The Torrington Fire Department like other city agencies, has been asked to do more with less every year since the dawn of my fire service career 8 years ago. The department's administration has complied with the request time and time again with flat funding, while other city services saw increases despite the directives. Years of 0% increases have been detrimental to a department which prides itself on being technologically advanced and progressive. As the cost of doing business rises each year, so do the bare minimum expenses within the budget. This has undoubtedly caused certain financial considerations to be pushed aside for the time being, such as advanced training programs for firefighters, replacements for the aging cache of motor vehicle rescue equipment, financial incentives for employees in order to promote better retention in a highly competitive field, or capital improvements in the ability of the department to provide service. The Torrington Fire Department regularly receives praise from members of larger Connecticut fire departments for the ability to accomplish what it does with what little it has. This is a testament to the quality of personnel who staff the 2 firehouses 24 hours a day, but there is room to improve. Upgrades of critically important equipment in recent years, such as breathing apparatus and turnout gear, has been invaluable and much appreciated. We understand the financial position of the city and have sought out ways to fund projects for the city's fire department on our own time. Grant projects and regional coordination have allowed the Torrington Fire Department to acquire new rope rescue equipment and 2 Lucas CPR devices, which allow for significant improvements in the delivery of medical aid to residents. The COVID-19 pandemic has not done the city's economy any favors. Despite this, the need for a high-functioning fire rescue department remains as high as ever. In closing, I reflect on the phrase I mentioned in the opening of this letter, that we are asked to do more with less. I find this remark ironic. It is fundamentally impossible. The fire department can only do less with less. I reflect on the countless incidents of significance in the past 12 months, and am thankful that resources were not any scarcer than they were. Thank you for your attention to this letter and ask for your support of a well-funded Torrington Fire Department. Respectfully, Tim O'Donnell.
Okay, the next one is from Tommy Reller of Torrington. We are writing you in regards to the upcoming 2020-2021 fiscal year budget with concerns in reference to the City of Torrington Fire Department's budget. The City of Torrington Fire Department, or TFD, has been underfunded for many years. This lack of financial support has caused the loss of fire prevention and safety training to the schools. Loss of training monies, inability to properly and promptly fix crumbling department infrastructure, as well as a shortage in safe and adequate staffing. It is crucial to properly fund and staff the TFD to protect the taxpaying citizens and people who frequent our city. The TFD currently has a minimum staffing level of 11 firefighters/EMTs on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This staffing level is below the nationally recognized standard of 15 firefighters on duty in the National Fire Protection Association's standard 1710, the organization and deployment of fire suppression operations, EMS and special operations and career fire departments. This lack of staffing puts citizens at greater risk if they are faced with a fire or other type of emergency, especially if 1 or 2 of the 3 staffed companies are tied up on their other emergency calls. This has been proven by the National Institute of Standards and Technology in their report on residential fireground field experiments. The TFD currently offers to the City of Torrington, as well as surrounding region, routine fire and medically related emergent and non-emergent responses. In addition to these roles, the firefighters also provide advanced technical skills, including high and low angle rope rescue response, trench and confined space rescue response, hazardous materials response and mitigation, ice water rescue, vehicle and machinery extrications, and building collapse response. To maintain readiness in all of these skills, the firefighters train daily on duty and have the option to take outside classes. Currently, these firefighters have to pay out of their own pocket to obtain training to become certified and or to stay current on these technical skills to better protect the public. In no other profession do employees have to pay out of pocket to obtain certifications and advanced skills in a field that they are required to perform and by their employer in order to benefit others. In addition to the lack of funds to pay for outside training, there's also a lack of funds to pay for in-house training, to include outside instructors coming in, training props, and training facility upkeep and enhancement. It seems to be quite a serious issue to force firefighters to take money away from supporting their families and have to pay for their own training to benefit the city. The TFD currently operates out of 2 buildings in the downtown area. Fire headquarters was built in 1978, and the North End Station was built in 1958. These buildings have been maintained by the city at a bare minimum and are showing their age with high heating costs, leaking and broken pipes, no renewable energy options, partially secured entrances, outdated living areas. These 2 buildings are also located in an area that creates a long distance uphill response to get to the highly populated Torrington area, West Side, Burrville, or Drakeville areas. While there is a fire station in the increasingly populated and commercialized Torrington area, it remains unstaffed with full-time fire protection and with a low response rate from its volunteer members, who are not necessarily certified to enter a burning building when they do respond. Having a properly staffed fire station in such an area as this is crucial in lowering insurance costs, decreasing response times, and increasing public safety. It is proven by the American Heart Association that in the event of cardiac arrest, the victim has only several minutes to be successfully resuscitated via CPR and AED before brain damage can occur. It takes many times that for a fire engine and ambulance to reach the distant Torrington region. Finally, it has been several years since TFD firefighters were present to teach fire prevention in the Torrington school system. This budgetary cut can have unmeasurable fallout in the years to come when children become older, playing with matches or lighters, not knowing the how or why to call 911, not having a home escape plan in place in case of a fire or emergency, and not knowing the premise behind stop, drop, and roll. These fire safety tips are also brought home by the students to their families, who may not be from this country and may only speak minimal English. These fire safety tips can prove invaluable to these families one day. In closing, we believe that as taxpaying citizens whose friends, neighbors, and family rely on the life-saving skills and immediate response from the fire department, that it is the utmost importance to properly fund this department on a level concurrent with the high-level services it provides, so that they may continue to operate in a prompt and professional manner and continue to improve their service to our city. Sincerely, Thomas and Emily Reller.
Okay, from Elliot Bickford, a Torrington resident. Good evening, my name is Elliot Bickford. I'm writing this letter to voice my opinion in the upcoming budgetary meetings. I would like to take the time to thank the mayor, fire chief, police chief, council members, and other elected officials and the Torrington area health staff for an excellent job in conjunction with Charlotte Hungerford over the past several months handling the COVID-19 outbreak. It is a very difficult task to try and keep an entire city population safe, especially when some of those measures are unpopular. I applaud the dedication and hundreds of hours you have all spent to attempt to minimize the impact. Being in uncharted territories, I understand that the Board of Finance and City Council are very leery of fiscal revenue forecasts and what the city will be receiving for aid. It's a position I certainly don't envy. I want to take the time, though, to remind the members that the very members at the police and fire departments that they have been working with are directly affected by their decisions. Over the past 10 years, following the last financial downturn, the fire department, police department, and public works departments have had their budgets held flat or cuts made the large majority of those years, while the Board of Education budget has continually grown as enrollment has declined, far surpassing the entire municipal budget. It is incredibly harmful to those department heads to try and maintain an operation year to year as fixed costs continue to rise and they are stripped of their capital and operating funds. All one needs to do is look west from City Hall 1 block and take a look at the shape of Prospect Street. It, like many others in the city, were allowed to deteriorate year after year as the decision to pave was postponed for various reasons. The end result? $40+ million in paving that required a bond, the interest further adding to the cost to the taxpayers. Our police and fire departments are two of the greatest assets the city has over neighboring communities. The staffing at the police department allows for fast response times to a 911 call versus the surrounding communities being reliant on the state police or much smaller municipal departments. If it was my spouse or children home alone, I would feel much safer knowing the Torrington Police Department could be there in less than 5 minutes versus over 15 minutes in the case that someone was trying to enter the home. The fire department offers a large amount of services to the community, not just putting out fires. They handle motor vehicle accidents, extrications, supplemental EMS response to Trinity Healthcare. Torrington Fire Department Engine 2 arrived first on scene to a cardiac arrest on Highland Lake Road, and the actions by their crew and Trinity's resulted in a very positive outcome for the patient last month. Technical rescue, cold water rescue, the 4 individuals that fell through the ice at Burr Pond were all safely rescued and recovered. Fire prevention education, fire code enforcement, and public fundraising, such as the MDA Boot Drive, Christmas for Kids, and various fundraisers for life-saving equipment, like the Lucas devices or smoke detectors they otherwise don't have funding for. Torrington, being an old mill town, has a larger number of pre-1950s built multifamily homes in close proximity, old, occupied, and vacant mill buildings, and various retail facilities that they are tasked with protecting. I would like to take the time to point out the comparison of what I feel is the municipality's most comparable to Torrington in size, population, demographic, grand list, socioeconomic status, and that is Norwich. Norwich is about 10 square miles smaller than Torrington, similar building types and amounts, but is protected by a paid fire department with 13 firefighters per shift and 5 volunteer departments as well. Torrington, on the other hand, has 11 paid firefighters and 2 volunteer departments to serve as backup. There was a fire recently on Sunset Lane. Torrington's Engine 2 was the first piece of apparatus on scene, despite the fire being only a few minutes away from Torringford's firehouse, and put the fire out quickly to minimize damage to the home. I'm not pointing this out to disparage the volunteer departments, but every year it is increasingly harder for volunteer departments nationwide to get new members, or by nature of their system, respond in a timely manner. It is a tremendous amount of time and dedication that many don't have the luxury to give anymore. Rapid response and intervention is paramount in public safety for a positive outcome to happen, and the Torrington Fire Department, while understaffed, does an excellent job providing those services to the taxpayers of Torrington, those coming to do business, or any of the thousands that drive through on any given day. I will remind the members that fire department's staffing and equipment has a large effect on the insurance rates paid by both by homeowners and business owners, determined by the ISO rating or the individual insurance company's threat calculations. When you figure in the service that is available to the taxpayers, I know it's easy to say, what do I need any of that for? But accidents, fires, and medical emergencies don't discriminate and happen when you least expect it. And the savings on insurance premiums the taxpayers receive their service at a reasonable cost. Doing rough math using last year's adopted budget figures, $5.44 million, versus the grand list yielding about $94 million in tax revenue, that would mean a home hypothetically paying $5,400, a fairly average tax bill from quick research, $5,400 a year in property tax pays about $280, less than buying a Cumberland Farms coffee every day, dollars a year for that service. I will also take the time to point out that the mill rate is only one part of the equation in determining tax burden. To say that a high mill rate equals high taxes without giving the home values to compare to is not an accurate representation of the situation. Torrington's average home value of $166,990 times 70% times 4.617% gives you roughly a $5,400 tax bill. Our neighbors in New Hartford, with an average home value of $294,479 times 70% times 3.25%, will be paying roughly $6,700 plus whatever additional fire tax, waste removal, insurance costs, etc. The point of my commentary is to highlight some of the services that we, the taxpayer, receive from these agencies in hopes that you, as our elected representation, make sure they get the proper funding to operate and keep our families safe. I have hopes that the surplus money saved over the years and money used to shore up the general fund can be used in conjunction with the grand list growth to offset the cost and keep the impact to a minimum. Respectfully, Elliot Bickford, taxpayer and proud lifelong resident.
All right, next one is from Mary Svets Giuliano. Good morning. As a 35-year veteran of Torrington Public Schools, I am writing in support of the budget proposal by the Board of Ed. I would find any proposed cuts quite insulting and a huge disservice to the teachers and students of Torrington. Education is about to change drastically in the coming 2021 school year. I have not witnessed changes like this, nor in this amount of time ever in my career. Distance learning is not an area we have been extensively trained in. This is not the same job we held 2 months ago, and this is not an easy transition. We are working extremely hard to reach students and continue their learning as best as possible. If these cuts are made, the message you will convey to us will be, great job, now let's cut some more. Let's make your job impossible to do well. Torrington students deserve a quality education, and Torrington teachers deserve the opportunity to deliver that quality education with the support of the Board of Ed budget. Right now, there is a huge push to take care of our frontline workers. We will soon become your frontline workers. Please value us and the education we provide. Sincerely, Mary Svets Giuliano.
Okay, from Rachel Harrell, a Torrington resident. To whom it may concern, my name is Rachel Harrell and I am native to Torrington. I graduated in Torrington High School in 1990, and my daughter is set to attend the fall of 2020, and my son is a couple years behind. It saddens me that the city of Torrington does not place value in their youth. Torrington has an aging population, and if we do not start respecting the needs of our youth, the trend of going to college and never returning to Torrington will continue. The condition of Torrington High School is unacceptable. In fact, it really has not changed much since I graduated 30 years ago, and I do not mean in a good way. It has always saddened me to see how uninviting Torrington High School has become. The fact the enrollment is on the decline should be a very big indicator that something needs to be done. Torrington High School needs to be competitive to the surrounding schools that are stealing away our children. My daughter, for example, has gone to school with a great group of kids since kindergarten in Torrington. This is all changing in the fall when many of those kids are going outside of the district for high school. Why? I'm sure a lot of it is curbing appeal and the fact that Torrington High School does not offer a lot of options outside of college preparatory. Although I know that is changing, but a shiny new facility would definitely help. This letter is to show my family's support of the 7 to 12 school project that has been recommended for Torrington High School and Torrington Middle School. Having the facilities on the same property would help the ebb and flow of the kids from middle school to high school. If the middle schoolers were part of a greater community, they would desire to stay and finish their schooling at Torrington High School. I believe we owe it to the kids of Torrington to build a new facility with state-of-the-art offerings. If we want Torrington to survive, we need our kids to return to Torrington and raise their families here. We can do that if the school system was more attractive to young families. Torrington is starting to bloom again, and the addition of a new high school building would help that flower blossom even bigger.
All right, the next one is from Jeff Putnam of Torrington. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Putnam, and I am a lifelong resident of the city of Torrington. I'm a graduate of our very own school system from way back in the 90s, and my children are now both students at Vogel-Wetmore. I think it's very important that we come together as a community to support the school district's initiatives this year. A very responsible 2.5% budget has been put forward which literally covers raises, health benefits, and other previously signed contractual increases, landscaping, transportation, etc. This 2.5% does not do anything to further advance the district. It simply maintains the same limited services we had this year. For once in the last decade, the Board of Education has delivered on becoming more efficient and made significant progress in special education. Please continue to support the progress of not only the budget, but the great opportunity presented by the state to renovate a school. Some of you may not realize that if we do not submit to the state in this budget cycle ending June 30th, we will lose the extremely generous reimbursement rate of over 70%. If this number drops just 5%, this means millions of dollars in additional bonding burden to the city. Make the right choice from a building committee and submit to the state to lock in the better rate. The taxpayers deserve to make the decision at referendum with the most advantageous options available to them. Thank you for your time and consideration. Be safe, everyone.
Okay, this email is from Karen and Ed Delisle from Torrington. This communication is in regards to the Torrington Fire Department Local 1567 budget. It seems as though every time a budget comes into play, the fire department is always affected by not supporting their needs. This is nothing new, as my husband was a firefighter from 1970 to retiring as captain in 1998. And every time a budget came up, it was always cutting back or eliminating their needs to service the community, all the protection that was expected of them to do. However, they always managed to do their best. Our son has been a firefighter for the past several years, and seeing the same after all these years that they can do without is sad. Firefighters are trained very well, and if they need something, it is because they do need it. They are exposed to a variety of chemicals and must have up-to-date gear. Today's world is changing and must be kept up to date. We have all heard the saying, try walking in her shoes. Well, it may be time to try walking in their boots.
All right, next one is from Virginia Wolford. To whom it may concern, I am a citizen and a taxpayer. I am requesting that the fire department budget receive the increase necessary that it needs to ensure the safety and continuing education of the firemen. The fire department should not have to continue running on an outdated budget from 2015. It is imperative now more than ever that we support our first responders, no matter what. During this COVID-19 crisis, our firefighters continued to respond to EMT calls without hesitation, putting the safety of the community above theirs and their families. It is time to put their safety first. Please consider a sufficient increase for the 2021 fire department budget. Sincerely, Virginia.
From Kelly Delisle of Torrington, to whom it may concern. I am writing this letter out of concern for the Torrington Fire Department 2021 budget. The fire department has been operating on the same budget since 2015. As a citizen and taxpayer of the city of Torrington, I find this to be completely unacceptable. The cancer bill went into place, but the gear has not been updated to be in line with current standards. Has there been a full rotation of gear yet? Fire hoses and rescue equipment for car accidents need to be updated. I am sure the list of outdated equipment goes on and on. In addition, there is a need for ongoing training to ensure the safety of the firemen. The department should be able to bring in specialized and outside training on an ongoing basis. Is the Board of Finance or the City Council considering the safety of the firefighters when deciding not to increase the budget year after year? I am requesting that the fire department budget receive the increase necessary to provide the ongoing training necessary for our firefighters and to ensure the safety of not only those heroes, but the community as a whole. Sincerely, Kelly Delisle.
All right, next one is from Stuart Garrow. To whom it may concern, I am a citizen and taxpayer in Torrington. I understand that the 2021 budget is going to be reviewed for the Torrington Fire Department. I am hoping that the budget is increased to accommodate all of the needs of the department. The fire department not only responds to car accidents and fire calls, but also emergency medical calls. We need to make sure that they have the training and updated equipment they need to continue to do their job safely. I am asking that the Board of Finance and City Council consider the budget being requested by the department. We cannot continue to make cuts to budgets without regard to the safety of these heroes. Sincerely, Stu Gero.
Okay. From Michelle Haas in Torrington. I am writing to indicate my support for the proposed renovation plans for Torrington High School. I currently have 3 children attending Torrington High School and thriving in a supportive school environment. I also had 3 children graduate and go on to a successful college career. Torrington High has provided the learning and support my children have needed to succeed. I think that the building and facilities have come under disrepair and that the proposed renovations would benefit all. The students in our community need to feel that they are given the same quality and care that other communities within Connecticut provide to their students. I am the member and president of the Torrington High School Governance Council and know that other communities prioritize their schools, and it is evident in the facility and the upkeep of the building. So I urge you to approve the renovation plan and funding for the upcoming school year. Sincerely, Michelle Haas.
All right, next one is from Jeremy Menard. To whom it may concern, I'm writing this email in full support of the fire department budget. Though I'd much rather stand before you in support, I appreciate the opportunity to still express my support in writing. Through the years, the fire department and firefighters have consistently been asked to make sacrifices through 0% or flat funding to help maintain minimal impact on overall budget and mill rate. When in reality, for the overall service provided, the fire department budget is minimal. It costs the citizens of the city, including myself, pennies on the dollar for 24/7, 365 fire, rescue, and supplemental emergency medical protection. The fire department and firefighters have been resilient through the years and worked with what was given, but please know this comes at great cost to all involved. Equipment is unable to be repaired, updated, or replaced when needed. Apparatus and building repairs pushed off and forgotten about. Firefighters paying out of pocket for their own training classes and random personnel equipment because the budget had been cut. What other job in the world do employees not only pay for their own training, yet also go to the training on their own unpaid time? Bottom line is there are unsustainable practices. The infrastructure of the fire department is in disrepair, and further budget cuts are only going to compound costs as this continues to happen year after year. The firefighters of this great city have always done and continue to do everything in their power to give back to the community in substantial ways. Local 1567 members have held fundraisers continually, giving back to the community while also working with community partners to provide specialized and life-saving equipment that may have otherwise never been thought of nor purchased. It is my belief there is no dollar amount that could ever be put on a life that is saved, while also assuring the overall health and safety of our firefighters. With that, I know and respect the hard task you're faced with, but I'm in hopes that you can see the value in this fire department, the vital roles they fill, and support the budget as presented. If you want to have future discussion, please find my contact information. Respectfully submitted, Jeremy Menard.
And from Nicole Menard, also of Torrington, to whom it may concern, please be advised I'm writing this email in regard to the fire department budget. As a city resident, I have become aware of the duties for the fire department in order to protect our ever-growing city. Not only are they responding to consistently more calls, those calls are not only fire-related, as many city residents can be aware of. With that said, I support the budget as proposed for the necessary protections the fire department provides our residents. Respectfully, Nicole Menard.
Is that it?
No, John, you're muted.
Gotcha. Thank you. To whom it may concern, this is from Nadine Spring. I'm writing this email in regards to the city's fire department budget, which I fully support as presented regarding the fire and medical protections the fire department provides. Respectfully, Nadine Spring.
And now the last one from Jason Lafreniere of Granby. Mayor Carbone, Board of Finance and City Council My name is Jason Lafreniere. I'm a special education teacher at Torrington Middle School, who has proudly served the residents of Torrington for the past 15 years. I am also the teacher representative to the Board of Education's Budget Subcommittee. I do not live in town, but have in the past, and have a fond connection to Torrington and all the wonderful opportunities it has to offer its residents. As you consider the overall budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, you have several decisions to make: fund or underfund, increase, hold the line or cut, invest or divest. These are some of the considerations you have to make for all areas of the city budget. I ask that you invest in the children of Torrington. I ask that you consider how any decision you make will impact the future of your city. The children of Torrington are the future of your city. Educating them is just one step in preparing for your city's future. Provide them with an education that is meaningful, rigorous, relevant, and you prepare them to be competitive participants in a 21st century society. Give them a reason to think fondly of their time in Torrington, and they will more likely return to Torrington to live and raise a family. In doing so, it will be their way of giving back to the community that gave them so much. To turn your backs on them now would potentially lead them to turn their backs on their hometown. To think that students are not aware of the controversy of budgeting is nearsighted. The children of Torrington are aware, and they are taking notice. So are their families. The Board of Finance and Board of Education joint meeting held May 5th saw the highest turnout for community participation than any other joint meeting held in recent future about the budget. 82% of those that commented were in favor of supporting the proposed school budget. I am aware that the school budget that was sent to the city was an increase of 4.8%. However, after listening to the City Council and Board of Finance, as well as changes in insurance, retirement, etc., the Board of Education was able to reduce their budget to be an increase of 2.5%, a number that both boards have stated departments should be looking at. The reductions were presented at the May 5th joint meeting. However, some Board of Finance members failed to acknowledge the work that was put forth by the Board of Education and School District Administration and continually referred to the Board of Education budget as being one that was looking to increase by 4.8%. That is not what the school district is looking for. Now more than ever, society is realizing how important it is to have an educational system that delivers instruction with rigor and fidelity. Under the direction of our strong leadership team, Torrington is on its way to having such a system. However, should the Board of Education be forced to make cuts, it will impede the path to success that Torrington Public Schools is attaining. I urge both boards to consider the legacy they wish to provide this city and budget accordingly to minimize cuts to the Board of Education and invest in its future.
And we do actually have one more comment from the Drakeville Volunteer Fire Department Chief, David Macalis. He asked that we also read his comments that he submitted into the record. So I'm going to read those for you. I hope everyone is well and staying safe during these trying times. In terms of budgets for the volunteer fire departments, while I understand and appreciate the need to keep the city's budget as low as possible, we are in a position that is quite unique. During the pandemic, we are not able to have our normal fundraisers. Drakeville is not able to hold our pancake breakfast, boot drive, nor our flea market, and perhaps others as the year goes forth. This is forcing us to dig even deeper into our savings. As we said before, Engine 35 is 31 years old this year and in need of an extensive service, including checking the brakes, as well as servicing the engine and transmission. This is estimated to cost us $3,150. While we have this money budgeted, we must pull the funds from savings as we do not have any other available income. We have been told by the chief that he put $10,500 stipend in for each department, which is a $500 increase to our stipend. $250 came from the increase and $250 from savings for fuel, keeping with the 2.5% increase that he was mandated. Total proposed budget for both volunteer fire departments was $42,000. Why is it that several years ago the volunteers were cut 50%, while no other department in the city was cut that much? But when it comes to increases, we must keep the same level. We are not asking for an increase. We are asking for our funds to be restored to the same level they were several years ago. If the volunteers are to survive in the city, we need a major increase in funding. During this pandemic, when we go out on calls and encounter the public, we would prefer to wash our gear so that no one gets sick. It takes several days to dry the gear and therefore would leave us without gear for the next call. I would love to be able to have a second set of gear for our firefighters, but we must pay our other bills. We need to have some savings for truck repairs, building and equipment repairs. Our current budget does not allow or include money to upgrade or purchase any new equipment or trucks. No improvements to our building or grounds, no training except when the members pay for themselves. We would like to have our funding restored to $30,000 stipend for a total of $81,000 for the total budgets of both volunteer fire departments. 2019 to 2020 budget was $41,000 with a $10,000 stipend. We all work so hard to support the city, but are feeling let down by this budget process. We have shown a realistic need at a realistic cost and are consistently left at the same budget where our budget is cut. Thank you for your consideration. And that concludes the public comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm gonna move right into the agenda. Sorry, I'm shuffling a lot of papers here. Item number 2 on the agenda is a review and discussion regarding the proposed city budget for the fiscal year from July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. So I'll just do a quick update from the beginning of, feels like the beginning of time. I'm sure it was less than 5 years ago. No, it may have been only 2 months ago. At level 1, the city departments presented to the Board of Finance and the City Council their departmental requests of $60,574,293. You will recall that those were delivered to the Board of Finance and the City Council, I think it was on February 18th of this year. On March 11th, we immediately commenced meeting as a budget subcommittee to start the review of those budgets, as it is our customary process for budget development. Right after that, the state declared a state of emergency and a public health emergency, and stayed all budget deliberations for the municipality until such time as the council, the legislative body, could determine how best to proceed, knowing that budget adoptions require public hearings. So we immediately stayed all of our actions after that March 11th budget meeting. That was a meeting with Chief Waldron to review the police department budget. Oddly enough, while the state stayed all of the city budget processes, it did not stay the Board of Education processes. I know that that was a little bit of a bone of contention with some of the comments that were read before the Board of Finance last week. I think it needs to be made clear that we have been doing everything in accordance with executive orders and as close as possible to our regular budget adoption procedures. So on May 6th, actually it was April 20th, the City Council agreed that they did not want to extend the budget process by 30 days as they could have, but elected instead to let the Board of Finance proceed with budget review, budget adoption, and the mill rate setting in accordance with Executive Order 7S, I believe it was. At that level 2, they did not take any action on the budget cuts that were made since the review of the police department budgets. So on May 6th, that level 2 budget was forwarded to both the City Council and the Board of Finance. And at level 2, we were at $57,800,519. Where we are right now, and after a couple of meetings with the Board of Finance, what we know is the goal was to get to the 2.5% increase, 2.5% being close to the grand list growth. So that was the goal, is to develop a budget that would not impact our mill rate. Unfortunately, even at level 3, to try to get to that 2.5%, it is still not going to get us to no mill rate impact. I wanted to take a few minutes to go over where we are at level 3, just so you can see what changes or what the impact is. And I know it was Board of Finance member Lorraine Pesky's first question at every budget deliberation for the 7 years that I've been doing this with you is, what will we not be getting as a result of these cuts? You know, it's an exercise that is, you know, well worth undertaking. So I wanted to just take a moment to walk through those level 3, level 4 cuts. I'm calling them level 3, level 4, because after level 2, when I then proceeded to meet with the Board of Safety to go over the budgets at level 2, we realized that there were two line items in the police department budget and in the traffic division budget that needed to be corrected. So at the Board of Safety level, we increased the police department budget by $113,433. That is reflective of the 53rd pay period. This is that year where we have that unfortunate and unpleasant responsibility of paying 53 pay periods. The second upward adjustment is a $4,000 line item for a portable traffic sign. So at level 3, the budget would stand at $57,917,952. And then level 4 is where I rolled up my sleeves, and Alice, who is on the phone listening here, should you have questions, then proceeded to see what we could do to get us to the 2.5%. The spreadsheet that was sent out, and John, I don't know, can you put that Excel spreadsheet up that says budget adjustments beyond level 2?
Yep, I'll do that now.
Somebody has a songbird in their background.
I think that's me, actually. I'm sorry.
Is it?
You missed the hummingbird, too.
Oh. Right, that's the one right there.
That's the one. Okay.
So I can walk you through each one of these line items, but in the interest of saving time, what I can tell you is what you're looking at is modifications that reduce the 57,917,952 to $56,639,982. That is actually $1,277,970 in cuts, or the net impact is, you're looking at halfway down this page, you'll see where the 113,433 and the 4,000 are added back in, but all of those other line items were reductions based on where we had vacancies or where we saw capital or operational expenses that we certainly don't want to sacrifice, but these are the, you know, the first run at trying to find those sacrifices. I will tell you that this will result in the reduction, or we will not fill, based on this proposal, a vacancy in the building department. That is a building official. We had a retirement in February. That position has been unfilled, mostly because of the virus and the lack of ability to do fingerprinting and testing. So that is a $57,750 reduction. There is a vacancy or shared position. I'm sorry, the administrative shared position. What we did with that position is, instead of filling that vacancy, which was another retirement in the same department that occurred in January, what we did is we filled that, created a part-time position, and that position is now being shared with our land use office. So our blight enforcement officer is now blight enforcement officer slash building clerk. The facilities manager that was being proposed in Public Works, that is an $85,000 position. That would be a position that we would look to eliminate. There were two clerical vacancies, one in the city clerk's office, which is a $52,000 line item with FICA about $55,000, and a clerical vacancy in our finance department. This was a position that we've been trying to bring in. So this is a $29,311 line item plus the FICA at $2242. I'm just trying to find the large reductions I'm proposing here. I'm proposing that we reduce the reserve for claims in heart and hypertension. That would be a combined $100,000 reduction. A reduction of $7,250 for outside duty. That is Department 19. Is that I think that's the police department. I don't have the department numbers in front of me. The other items are we have vacancies that we would not fill in our street department. That would be a $53,000 vacancy that would not be filled. And then the rest is pretty much adjustments to those capital projects out of our municipal revenue sharing account balance. Actually, that's, capital projects that would have come out of that municipal revenue sharing account. The West Center Bridge project, and then contingency and management operations line items would also be proposed to be reduced. So as you can see, the net impact of those additional modifications total $1,160,536.79. That's the combined level 3, 4. That still does not get me to 2.5%. To get to 2.5%, I would have to dig a little deeper to find another $520,848.89. I can assure you that that means salaried line items. We would certainly work with all of our departments to see if department heads, to see if there are any other line items they can identify that can be trimmed a little bit, but those are bodies. With that said, I can also assure you or tell you, share with you that at 2.5%, the mill rate increase would be 0.82 mil, which would bring us to 46.99. With a margin for error, I would venture to say that's a 47 mil rate. And for us,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. When you say that would bring us up to a 47 plus or minus,
Yeah.
that's not including anything from the Board of Ed side. This is just the impact of the city side.
Yeah. No, that would be including the Board of Education at 2.5%.
Oh, thank you.
So that would be both departments at 2.5%.
But we're not, but you're saying we're not quite at 2%, 2.5% just yet.
The city is not at 2.5%. And unfortunately, the Board of Education is also not at 2.5% because while they did a great job, and I'm listening to that one letter to talk about the tremendous amount of work that they did to get down to the 2.5%. But their capital is still standing at the $1.5 million. And that, that would require being zeroed out for them to be at 2.5%, or they would have to find a $1.5 million reduction somewhere else if they want to preserve their capital. And when I say 2.5%, with both between the city and the Board of Education, that would be based on revenues, including $2.6 million from fund balance and $1.4 million from the internal service fund. So you can see where we are. We're nowhere near that mill rate, that negative impact to the mill rate. Even with looking at the year-end projection for the city of Torrington on our budget performance, based on the policy that was adopted a couple of years ago regarding fund balance, that would only leave roughly $2.5 million for us to use from fund balance to get to that 10% where we were always trying to get. So I'm putting this out there just to inform the boards where we are and what the cost of these reductions will be. I haven't asked the council to date to accept these cuts, mostly because there are department heads that I have not met with to discuss all of these vacancies and the elimination of the position for this budget cycle. Chief Baldwin and I have a meeting tomorrow morning. We're potentially looking at some strategies of maybe just budgeting for a mid-year filling of the vacancies that he has. That might chip away at the $520,000 that I have to find. But that is where we are at this point. So I'll open the floor for questions or comments.
Mayor Carwin?
Yes.
Christopher Anderson. So it seems counterintuitive, but I would probably start by just at least saying that I hear what people are saying about the volunteer fire departments. And in all of these cuts, it's really, really hard to ask for another increase. But I don't want to put that out of our mind. I do support restoring the volunteer fire department's budgets. And while I don't know how practical this year is, if we can't do it this year, we do need to do it soon. So if there's any way we can help those guys help us, I know it's a big ask and I know it's hard this year when we're looking at not meeting our target anyway. But I do have that in the back of my mind. I do hear those comments and I do think that's something that if we could do, I would love to see.
Thank you. All right, Mark Bushka has his hand up.
Excuse me. Actually, I had it up when you were going over your proposed cuts.
Yes.
Specifically, some of the payroll.
Yes.
Salaries. Were any of those new positions that you wanted to create that you're cutting, or were there vacancies that employees retired or just left that you're not filling?
The only one that was a new position that we were trying to create was the facilities manager. As you know, over the years, listening to our police and fire department chiefs, Right now, they have command staff that are doing facility management. So this is an item I think that gets introduced every year, and unfortunately it does get cut every year. All of the other salary line items would be the result of retirements or an employee who left, and we would be looking to not fill that vacancy.
So raise my hand, Mayor.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Lance Boynton has his hand up first. Can I get to Lance and then to Ian? Thank you. Lance,
Thank
you
you.
have a question?
This is Lance. I know a little bit of a beating the same drum here, but as we look at the financial situation, are there areas where we can consolidate between the city side and the Board of Ed to help out with some of these vacancies? We're looking at 500,000 here. Basically, we got about 1.5 on the capital side that's not included in this. So that really brings up that mill rate increase. It doubles the 0.8 out to about 1.6 as currently stated, right?
Well, actually, I was taking into consideration the 1.5. So
Okay.
I don't want to be held to the, to the 0.82 to the 10th degree here. But yeah, I think our numbers were taking into consideration that they were still up their 1.5.
Okay. But yeah, my initial thought again is just from a headcount side, are there areas between the city and the Board of Ed where we can consolidate and leverage each other's experiences to get rid of some of the redundancy?
I have, as has the superintendent and the current business director, had numerous meetings to try to find a way that we can make that happen. And, the challenge is trying to locate one office within, either one of our department headquarters, so to speak, that separates them from all of the other department heads where they need access to. It has been an increasingly difficult task for us to identify a way to make that happen.
Well,
So
in light of the COVID-19, we're all working remotely. Is there an opportunity there where you've got a hybrid situation?
Well, it's certainly something I can broach with the superintendent and the business director to see if there's any further thought on that.
Might be an opportunity.
I'll certainly reach out and see what I can gauge the interest in.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Councilwoman Ruette had her hand up.
Well, Lance, welcome to the Board of Finance. Yes, we have been talking about shared services between the Board of Ed and the City of Torrington for many years, and I'm still a strong advocate for revisiting that because, and what, if you want to look at an opportunity versus a challenge, this would be the opportunity to really look at that again. And you're right. We're in such a different environment with many businesses are reassessing, what employees are able to work more remotely, either do telecommuting or telework. And I think it's time for the city and the Board of Ed to look at that. And I know it's not, that's going to take some time and planning, but this might be the time, even though it's been unsuccessful in the past, to really determine what that might mean. But before Lance spoke, my initial thought was, Mayor, this is a difficult time, and I appreciate the level 4 and the cuts of the position, not cuts, but really elimination of positions that were planned to fill and not fill, but I'm in a position where I feel like we need to go a little deeper. I really don't think the people of Torrington are ready for an increase of any sort. This is, you know, if you look at the economy and the unemployment rate, I do think at this point it has to have a deeper look. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Christopher Bayes has his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my only comment for today is, you know, I hear all the testimony from today, and I'm really appreciative that those people, taxpayers, are able to write in and be a part of this process. It's very important. I guess the only thing I'd ask at this point is I'd like to see a recommendation from the council before we move to set a mill rate, whenever that meeting will be in the next few weeks. I'd like to see a recommendation of where they're at after budget deliberations continue here. I'd really like to gauge and feel their feel. I know we hear some comments today, but really where they're at with increases in the mill rate or decreases or holding steady, whatever the case may be. I think I'd like to hear a recommendation from the council, a formal one, before we go ahead and set a mill rate.
All right, and as the Board of Finance knows, and I'm hoping the City Council knows, our original goal was to try to get this budget adoption and mill rate setting completed by May 26th. We originally were shooting for the 19th, but I think came quickly to a conclusion that the 26th was probably a more achievable or palatable timeline. Based on where we are right now, I'm inclined to suggest to the Board of Finance that we extend that one more week and maybe go out to June. I'm looking at the calendar now, to the June 2nd timeline. I'm thinking June 2nd, just talking through the process, would afford more discussions at the council level, one more meeting with the council for discussion, and then another opportunity for the public to weigh in, and that with a 3-day newspaper publication of the proposed adopted budget and mill rate, and the 10-day appeal period would bring us to June 15th, which, as this board knows, is a little bit of a, it's getting close for our assessor and our tax collector to be able to reconcile and get those tax bills out before June 30th. So 2 things I would propose. Yes, if you're waiting for the council to give you some direction, I think tonight would be the appropriate time to get that. Certainly June 1st is also an opportunity for them to address your request. And then June 2nd, we can move forward with budget adoption. Right, I see Christopher Anderson has his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know how to put it down. Oh, here it is. We're all still learning. It's fine.
Yeah.
It definitely bears repeating. And again, with Lance and Ann and year over year, shared services is the way forward for Torrington. Some of the low-hanging fruits, AP, AR, human resources, there has to be a way that we as all our boards collectively can figure out how to share these services, how to share these professionals, and avoid any sort of duplication throughout the entire town. That aside, just to reiterate, to make sure that we're pulling everything that we can possibly do for the town. Now, I think you had said, or I guess refresh my memory if you wouldn't mind. We had originally looked at an amount from the fund balance that was comparable to last year. Are you now saying, as of today, that these numbers that we're looking at are we looking at more or less from the fund balance than last year, or are we drawing it all the way down to that 10% buffer that we chose to keep for our bond rating?
So the fund balance, as you may recall from our last meeting, right now is $15,906,863. That stands at roughly 12.28% of our current year operating budget. Last year, we appropriated $2 million from the fund balance to offset the impact of a mill rate. Based on budget projections to year end this year, we, based on the city's budgets projections for year end, it does not look like we would need to use any of that $2 million. So that 15,906,000 stands where it stands. And for us to not go below the policy adopted 10%, the most that we could use from the fund balance would be $2.9 million.
Okay.
I am a little concerned as we've been going through these bond rating reviews that if whenever we've had these reviews and we're asked, do you plan on using any of your fund balance to offset any of your budgetary plans? The answer was yes, but it was always yes for those one-time expenses that can be identified so that you're not creating this budget deficit in your operating that becomes a structural deficit moving forward. I don't know that I have $3 million worth of one-time expenses for this budget. So if we were to go that deep, I think that we run the risk of using that one-time revenue source for operating expenses,
Right.
which can be dangerous.
Yeah,
There's
I
that volatility that we always try to avoid.
understandable. I certainly want to use every tool that we have in our toolbox, but it's a dangerous and slippery slope to be using the fund balance for operating expenses.
Yes.
So, but as long as just for the record, that we are considering, again, as much as we can possibly spend from that fund balance, the full 2.9 at this point. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that as well. So when we start to put together the budget impact at a few levels, we can show the Board of Finance, at 2.5, or excuse me, to get us to a 10.5% fund balance, that's a 2.3 million. To go the full, that extra 0.5%, that brings us flat to the ceiling, it is 2.9. So we'll show that in our in a few analyses for you to look at.
Thank you.
All right, Lorraine Pesky.
This is a question for Alice, and it's actually more related to the 1920 budget. Are we looking at any of the state revenue payments for 1920 that we have not yet received yet, or have not put in our drawdown? I'm very concerned about what the state is going to do even for 1920, so that we're looking at the fund balance and saying, and kind of excited to a certain extent, bad term, but that if we want to look at that for 2021, that's a good thing, because we haven't used it. But I anticipate the legislature going back into special session sometime in June. Somehow they're going to have to figure out how to do what all the cities and towns have been doing, and making some changes to the amounts of money that are allocated to the cities and towns, and maybe even department boards of ed.
So I saw that Alice was unmuting herself for a second there. Alice, are you available? Did you want to share with Ms. Pesky not only what revenues through our FEMA application we may be anticipating, but even the timeline and how we're operating all of those, accounting for all of those expenses?
Can you hear me, Mayor?
I can.
Okay. Well, the plan is for all of the COVID-19 expenses that would be reimbursed either through FEMA or a different source. So far, we're at like $160,000. The last notification we got is that we'd get full reimbursement for those eligible expenses. Sometimes eligible in our opinion is not eligible in someone else's opinion, but so those costs we're looking to account for in a separate fund, and we're anticipating that those will be reimbursable. For the 19-20 year, I am not aware of any funds being withheld. The one state revenue that I have not seen, and I believe we usually get it at June, I'd have to look that up, is for our municipal aid for construction projects. That's $605,000. I haven't heard anything about that being withheld. I'm anticipating that we will get that at the regularly scheduled time. I hope that
So-
answers your question.
So Alice, there's no more drawdowns that you have to do?
I'm not sure what you mean by drawdowns. We don't do drawdowns here. They're state monies that come through without us doing anything.
Without that, okay, all right.
Correct.
Thank you, Alice.
Did that-
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, Mark Bushka.
Couple questions on you mentioned 1.4 million from the internal service fund
Yes,
as a possibility.
yes.
What is the balance in that now? Alice probably needs, maybe Alice could.
Yeah, I think I have it here. Oh. Alice, you might have it faster than I do. I think I'm looking at the April 8th number.
I'm looking for my folder. Just one sec.
But that's money we could safely transfer without creating an issue for the internal service fund.
So that's a good question, because keep in mind what we're doing this year is last year the Board of Finance agreed to reduce the appropriation from the Board of Education to a flat 100%. The city stayed at the 105. This year, both the city and the Board of Education are going down to 100%. And we're increasing the $1.4 million. We've been over the last couple of years doing 1.2. And keep in mind that this is also the fund that provides a transfer for the other post-employment benefit, medical benefit or healthcare benefits. So we can look at that. We can absolutely look at that and bring something back to the board tomorrow evening when we review budgets again, if that's helpful for you.
Yeah, I think at our last meeting, we were talking about revenues, and we thought, I mean, because claims are way down because of elective procedures not being done because of what's going on,
Yes.
we could safely make that transfer, I thought.
Yeah, I think that was it was phrased that it was a good thing, and that's why we were well reserved, but also that it could be a bad thing, because as soon as these hospitals open up, the elective surgery and people are getting back into the dentist's office, and that we may see that reserve balance taxed considerably for all of the delays in healthcare that people have been putting off for the last 2 months, 10 weeks. Certainly, absolutely something we will bring and let everybody take a look at and give us some thoughts on it. All right, Frank Rubino, I think you have a question.
This is Rubino. I don't have a problem with you're saying in contingency or in money reserve is 15.9 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, our fund balance is 15.9, which is 12.2%.
12.28%, yes. Yeah. My recommendation to the Board of Finance was to take $1.5 million from that and incorporate it into the budget and see where that takes us. Instead of the 2.9 that was discussed, take 50% of that, or 1.5 million, and introduce that into the budget and see where it takes us on the next step forward.
All right, so I can certainly do one more calculation that would show that. And by I mean Alice. All right, so Lorraine, your hand's up again.
I'd be interested to know the city council's views on looking to the unions to discuss some kind of a deferral of increases, wage and salary increases. I know what I'm saying sounds awful, given the tremendous efforts that everyone on the city side and everyone on the Board of Ed side, and I'm throwing this out tonight to the city council because we're meeting with you, but I have also said this previously at Board of Finance meetings, and I'm not talking about only the city side, I'm also talking about the Board of Ed side. And it sounds awful because I know what's going to happen on the Board of Ed and the tremendous pressure that just trying to open schools next September to come up with some sort of a plan is going to be absolutely outrageous. But to think of doing any of the things that we're doing in the city of Torrington right now with fewer people, which is what you're saying will have to happen if we need to get to that additional $520,000 plus in reductions, and the Board of Ed looking at that we hadn't even talked about the capital budget and the $1.5 million in capital projects, and we see what not investing in our capital is costing us across the city and across the Board of Ed buildings. I'm interested to know, am I the lone voice crying out in the desert here?
So Sharon Wagner, Councilwoman
No, not
Wagner.
at all.
That's okay. I tend to agree with Lorraine. I was an educator for many years, and we had a difficult time at one point in the late 90s. And we had to take a salary freeze for 2 years. And I don't want to ask anybody to do that, but we have so many people out of work. Everybody is afraid about the budget being increased. We're worried about the status of our school, our high school especially. And I probably get slings and arrows as well, but I join Lorraine in thinking, is this something that we can bring into a discussion at some point? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner. Mr. Bayes, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Mayor, I just wanted to clarify, are we on the third agenda item, just talking about revenues at this point?
So, I morphed the two. We ventured into the revenue. The reason I had that as an agenda item is because I wanted to introduce the possibility of looking at the fund balance for potential funding or mill rate offset. So I did send to Board of Finance and City Council members a sort of an analysis of year over year since 2014, how that fund balance has performed. All those numbers are right there in our annual audits. They're all on our website. I myself had been tracking those, year over year just to be prepared for those S&P rating calls. But I think if you review those, you'll see where budget performances have year over year been beneficial. One of the letters that you heard earlier this evening was for us not to spend our budgets down and to allow those surpluses to move forward to be used to offset next year's budget. When you review those, that budget analysis, those audit reports, you will see that the $13 million that's in that fund balance is the direct result of us not spending down our budget year over year and allowing those surpluses due to a good a good year based on, weather conditions or vacancies in the police department where there may have been an overage in, or a surplus, I should say, in their salary line items. But that is a long answer to say, yes, we're on number 3. 2 and 3 have fallen in together.
Thank you. I guess my question is, I know there have been some additional revenues coming in. I'm not aware of any on the city side at this point, just kind of in response to COVID-19 and offsets. I know that there is an influx of over $600,000 on the Board of Education side, and not to digress too far on those things, but I think that if there's anything on the city side, while we're talking about the city budget, it's important to include those revenues at this point as help in offsetting next year's budgets, revenues that are coming in now to help ease up the belt on this year's budget.
So to that point, the superintendent Levonsky and the business director Ed Aram and Alice and myself, along with Chief Towie, did meet last week to talk about that. Of course, it was before we had any knowledge of the CARES funds that will be coming to the Board of Education. But I think it's too early. At least that's what I was hearing from both the superintendent and the business director. It's too early for us to know what the surpluses are. One of the other reasons is probably worth our waiting until the June 2nd date so that we'll get a better idea of what those surpluses are. And I'm sure that, as we all know, the changes that'll probably be coming down the pike for distance learning may dictate how those surpluses are actually spent. So more dialogue, but if the Board of Finance is agreeable to waiting until June 2nd for that budget adoption and mill rate setting, we may be able to get some better answers by that time.
Yeah, I guess my question is just if there's anything that's part of that CARES Act on the city side.
No.
Okay.
No, unfortunately, no. And how the city is currently budgeting for our COVID-related expenses, and you'll see this on your Board of Finance agenda tomorrow night, is we have developed a fund where we're tracking all of those expenses. And at first we learned the first notice was FEMA would be reimbursing 70%. More recently, we're hearing 100%. But I also am hearing having that same, that same sense in the back of my neck that when OPM reaches out to us and says, what does your fund balance look like? It does beg the question, what will we not receive? Because we do have a healthy fund balance. So still a moving target, to say the least. So Lance Boynton, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to support Ms. Pesky's comment. A couple sessions ago, I was talking about the contractual obligations being the term or the buzzword that we hear all the time. And I've seen numbers of 94% of the increases are all based off contractual obligations. Those contracts are put in place with known data. And obviously, we're in a situation that I don't even like to say the word unprecedented, but we're in unique times. And those negotiations did not bring into effect, a 1 out of every 6 Americans without a job or furloughed, or those contractual obligations were based off a certain amount of contact hours and everything else that is all up in the air right now. So, I support the concept of having a conversation to see if we can delay some of those contractual raises, because we are in these very unique times. And moving forward, when the next congressional or the next term for negotiations, I think we need to bring in some caveats of best practices or lessons learned from the COVID-19. So we're not put into this situation where we're back into rhetoric of contractual obligations being, forcing our hands into financial situations that just might not be achievable.
For space, I just want to say quickly that I concur with both Ms. Pesky and Mr. Boyan.
Okay. Christopher Anderson.
Just got to unmute real quick. Thank you. So we keep bringing up the June 2nd date. Do we need a straw poll real quick just to see where everyone is leaning, or are we all generally in agreement that we're going to make June 2nd the next action date? I would be very hesitant to go any farther past that. I feel like that's as close to the finish line as we can push it.
No, I appreciate that. And that's why I was sharing the timeline. June 2nd gets us, when you factor in the 3-day requisite newspaper publication and then the 10-day appeal period, that brings us to June 15th for the assessor and the tax collector to reconcile their accounts and prepare bills. So I would agree with you, June 2nd should be the latest. But that also allows us, because there are other items that are urgent, dare I say, that this Board of Finance should be looking into and considering between now and then. So we have a Board of Finance meeting tomorrow evening, the 19th. I think you all received an email from me trying to pull together another joint meeting with the City Council and the Board of Finance to hear the Board of Education's proposal on school construction. With that proposal would also be advice from our bond counsel and financial advisor on financial financing structure for the proposal. And if the goal is to get that grant submitted before June 30th, the boards are going to have to hold a public hearing to agree to set a referendum date. That referendum date does not need to occur before June 30th, but for the grant application to be given consideration by the state, that would have to be a date that has already been scheduled. So I'm already talking the 19th, the 21st, or the 26th if I can't get a quorum of these two boards, and then June 2nd. No matter how much we plan these budgets or how much information we have in advance, we always come down to the last 3 weeks being, back-to-back meetings and number crunching.
That's how it goes, and we appreciate your effort in puzzling all that together. Thank you.
Sure. No, you're welcome. Mark Bushka.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, Lorraine made the point about talking to employees. I think we'd have to do that across the board,
Yes.
City and Board of Ed, so everybody is making a contribution. We can't just pick out, this department, we think their budget's too high, so let's not give them a raise. It's got to be everybody, all employees across the board. That's my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. I know that the last two concessions were agreed to by city departments. We did not get the same response from the Board of Education in the past. And I know from after Lorraine Pesky mentioned this to me earlier in the budget season, I did get early feedback that the city departments would be reluctant to come back to the table and discuss concessions if they were alone in this.
But like someone made a comment, this is extraordinary times.
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah.
I mean, now's the time to really try that.
Absolutely. I'm there. I'm just putting it out there that when you say across the board, that's exactly how this would have to go. We can't just ask our policemen and firemen and street departments to do this.
Yeah. Like Lance said, 1 in 6 people are unemployed. What percentage of municipal employees are unemployed? A lot less than 1 in 6.
Unemployed? So,
Yes.
Yeah, you know, we've been cutting those departments with vacancies. I'll be the first one to say it. I can bring forward to the Board of Finance a list of how many positions have been eliminated over the last 6 years.
I mean, over the last 3 months.
3 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would be
The-
interesting to see them both, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can do that.
No, this is Laureen. It was not my intention to single out any department or any.
No, I didn't think you meant that.
No, I want everybody on both sides, city and Board of Ed.
Mrs. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Wright.
when I was teaching, we took a freeze a couple times, a step freeze. Did you recall if that was only the Board of Ed that did that, or was that citywide at those junctures? Do you recall that?
See, I don't want to say anything about how long ago that was, but can you tell me how long ago that was? I think in the last 8 years. No, it was Ryan Bingham's administration. There were 2 years that
A while ago, yeah.
it was, yeah. So, yeah, I can certainly, I'm attempting to schedule a joint meeting with the superintendent and business director tomorrow, and the chairman of the Board of Education. I can certainly broach the subject with them and have that conversation as well. Anne Ruette?
So I did put my chat on, under the options.
Are
but
you chatting?
You've
Okay.
just been, no, not chat. I think I was raising my hand without
You were.
raising my hand on video. But anyway, I think Laureen and Chris were asking what is the opinion of the council. So as one council person, I think everything is on the table, whether, and, even looking at early retirement, sort of writing some notes down here, shared jobs. Even if you are reducing your workforce and adding functions onto a current position, even looking at a percentage increase for someone who might take on additional activities. So I think everything should be on the table. Probably the easiest is to look at, at the contracts, but to bring, to really have an active discussion with the unions in a Zoom meeting, I think would be really hard. But I do think it's the leadership, as just elected officials, we have expectations, of the administration to really come forth with all of these ideas. I think, we're all on the same page. We do need to, come into this with a whole different, set of eyes. And I'm with, Lance, I don't really know you very well, but you take some of the words out of my mouth, but unprecedented, I'm so tired of that word as well. So if we could call it something else, but we are in a very different time that everything should be on the table. So, but I think if you're asking one council person, I'm certainly open to all of those options, Laureen and Chris. So.
All right. So I see 3 more hands are up. Oh, so Mark Bushka, did you have another question, or is that still from the other? You're all set? All right.
No,
Councilwoman.
that's from before, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Frank Rubino, Councilman Rubino.
I'll defer to Paul. I want to hear what Paul has to say first.
Okay.
I'll say something else.
Did you see the look on my face? Oh, Councilman Cavanero, did you have questions or comments? You're muted. There you go.
Can you hear me? All right. A number of things. Number one, yes, I agree that we should not entertain the notion. That's too nice. No, we should definitely enter into conversations with the unions about trying to find some reasonable expectations for what we can do going forward. That's not about something else. It's about being realistic. I work as some people know I work private sector, and the company that Lorraine's son works for, and I'm sure she can tell you, there's been serious layoffs, within our company, and no one ever said to us, and I'm sure they didn't say to Lorraine's son, because of all these layoffs, you will be expected naturally to be doing less. The expectations will be for less performance because we don't have as many people. No, this is in the nature of what the economics are at this point in time. On a different but related note, I brought this up at the last meeting. This has to do with the discussion about funding for a new school. It was my opinion several weeks ago at the city council meeting. It is my opinion now, and I would love to get as many finance people or finance people on board with my take on this subject as possible. I think it is extremely premature. Do we need a new high school? Could we use it? Absolutely we can. Does the building need to be modernized? Yes, it can. But I will not support a proposal to do this until such time as we have taken, as a city, at the council level, finance level, and certainly driven by the Board of Education and our administrators, a long, hard look on what lessons we are going to learn from post-COVID, post-quarantine America, how that will affect education, with the goal of finding what I think one of the silver linings of this experience is that it is going to force an awful lot of institutions to rethink how they go about their business. In terms of education, I think it's long overdue. I've brought it up many, many times that we finally now have a basis upon which to have a long-term conversation about regionalized approaches to education, about regionalized administration, about at-home learning, by which then the City Council and the Board of Finance take up the task of saying how much money, and this is to the Board of Finance. A lot of you don't know this. I served a long time on the Board of Education, so I do speak from some experience here. How much money can we save if we begin to, at scale and in a serious way, incorporate at-home learning in the future, on just off the top of my head, in terms of transportation, in terms of food, in terms of associated insurance costs with having to get kids to and from and having kids in that place, in terms of all kinds of support systems. I think there's a huge opportunity. It won't take a year, it'll take numerous years to get there. But the conversation has to be started now about what does a future forward-looking curriculum look like? Not just bullet points about, yeah, we want to do this, we want to throw, and a whole smorgasbord of things that I've seen in these council packets that I've received, but a really directed, focused, and disciplined approach to curriculum that can also regionalize, whereby the highest performing kids in Torrington have more in common with the highest performing kids in Litchfield and Cornwall and Winsted than they do with the average performer, from an educational point of view, specifically education I'm talking about. And by the same token, more average, the bell curve of kids in Torrington have more in common with the bell curve of kids in Cornwall, blah, 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 blah. And therefore there's a whole educational approach and model for them, on and on. And you can find tremendous efficiencies here, but beyond just the efficiencies, you can find tremendous opportunity for real advancement, for really pushing forward education in the United States, in our county, in Litchfield County, in a way that we haven't looked at before. And I think this is the opportunity to do that. So I will not support this. The school is a shell. The school is simply a bunch of rooms to facilitate a curriculum. The trick is the hard work is coming up with that curriculum. And it has many tentacles at this point because of the new opportunities and the new demands for, remote learning, but also the tremendous opportunities for being able to deliver a much better educational model tied to the current job opportunities that exist at a lower cost. And this all needs to be on the table. And at the point that we figure that out, then we can figure out how to build a brick and mortar to accommodate. In other words, we can even be doing it in shifts. I know for a fact my daughter, who works in a very high performance charter school system, they're well down the road, okay, and taking this opportunity to start talking about shifting within their schools and how that's going to allow them to do things they could never have done before because they were so quick to adapt, which is the beauty of charter schools, to this remote learning model, that they are in a position to be doing that, or they will shortly be in a position to be doing that. And that's the kind of work that has to happen. And that's the kind of, I think, prioritization of how we go forward with that school proposal committee. And I will stand down with that. But we need to look at post-quarantine Torrington in all these aspects going forward. And with that, I'll stand down. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. With that said, I don't see any other comments or questions from the Board of Finance, and we're.
Frank had his,
Yep.
Frank had his hand up earlier.
Frank, did you? I know you were deferring to.
No, I took it down, Mayor. The thing that I want to understand here is you're talking about bringing contracts forward and renegotiations. I would take a serious look at it, but the problem we're seeing right now is the people that are laid off and the money that they're getting, max of $649 plus $600 from the government. That's $1,249 per week. That's before taxes that they're taking home being unemployed until the end of July. I hope you all understand that. There's a lot of people out in the workforce right now that are saying to themselves, I should be laid off and making that kind of money to the end of July. So I want that to be, put in your heads and understand. I understand, we have a sense for negotiations and stuff like that. But I honestly think we have a commitment to the community to go with a zero-based budget. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. We have corporations out there that are in lieu of what they're going to do in the next 2 to 3 months. And for us to increase the taxes in this town, to me, would be unheard of right now. I won't support it. I will not support an increase. I'm telling that to the Board of Finance. I'm telling that to the Board of Council. Is there a way? Is there a way of taking down certain monies to make that 2.5%? If there is, so be it. But I will not support a tax increase, and I'll leave it at that.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to close my participants. So last call, because we do have a regular city council meeting that's already 30 minutes late. So if there are no other questions or comments, the only thing I'm asking is if all of you could kindly respond or send to Carol and or Jonathan your availability for a joint meeting on Thursday night for the Board of Education's presentation. I'd like to do that early. If we could possibly do it at 5 o'clock or 5:30 at the latest, because I think it's going to be a comprehensive presentation and discussion. So if you could all just please get in touch with Carol and confirm your availability. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Anderson.
Bayes, second.
Okay, so I heard the motion by Mr. Anderson, a second by Mr. Bayes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much. I know this is